Hello, everybody, and welcome to our discussion wherever you are in the world. My name is Andrew Senior, and I'm an expert on the creative economy. I've worked with UNESCO, national and regional governments, and other UN and international organizations on the development of the creative economy for over 20 years. I've worked in or with over 50 countries on a range of creative entrepreneurship and policy development initiatives. The UNESCO Bangladesh Creative Economy Prize was announced earlier this year and saw nominations coming in from around the world. As this is a new prize, it's worth putting it into a little more context. Many of you will be wondering, what has Bangladesh got to do with it? Why now? And what is the prize for? So let's start with the why now and why Bangladesh. Well, this year we've celebrated the UN International Year of the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development and seen two important milestones: the 50th anniversary of Bangladeshi independence, and also the centenary of the birth of the father of the nation of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Last year, the Bangladeshi government agreed to fund this new UNESCO prize, which is named for Bangabandhu and presented in his honor. So what does the prize reward? Well, its focus is on recognizing excellence in different types of programs and interventions that support the development of entrepreneurship within the creative economy. In putting out the call for nominations, UNESCO wanted to hear about current initiatives that could evidence both impact and potential. It wanted to hear not just from the organizations, but also from the beneficiaries of their programs, the women and young people who are being provided with support to develop their skills as creative entrepreneurs. The focus of the award is on effective engagement, on impact. Many will ask, why is UNESCO prioritizing entrepreneurship over creativity? What has entrepreneurship got to do with culture and creativity? The answer is simple. We need both creative entrepreneurs and creative talent if the creative economy is to reach its potential. Both are critical. A society needs both if it wants to see its creative economy grow, to play its part to develop sustainable development. And there's huge potential in the creative economy's ability to deliver, particularly to people who are often underrepresented in culture and business. It creates jobs and opportunities for women, young people, and other marginalized groups. So we need to find the most effective mechanisms to better nurture and grow creative entrepreneurship within our societies. Today, I have the pleasure in introducing you to the 5 shortlisted finalists for the inaugural UNESCO Bangladesh Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman International Prize for the Creative Economy. In the next 50 minutes or so, we'll hear more about what they do and how their initiatives are delivering the infrastructure that supports and builds creative entrepreneurship. We're showcasing all 5 finalists because they have different approaches, operate in different environments, and have different challenges. But what they have in common is that they recognize the critical importance of fostering wider entrepreneurship in the creative sector. They understand that that entrepreneurship is critical if a sector is to deliver to its potential, to realize new opportunities, to create jobs and new income streams, to be a key force in delivering sustainable development. We hope that this discussion and their examples will encourage you to think about how more can be done to develop entrepreneurship locally for you and your peers in the creative economy. So let me introduce you to the shortlisted finalists. As you will hear, it is a global group, all working in challenging situations and all delivering in ways that are truly inspirational. From Uganda, we have Sike Japeth, who leads Motive, the winner of this year's prize. Motive is the youngest organization of the finalists and has achieved a great deal in a short time. It includes both creative entrepreneurship training, physical and virtual marketplaces, alongside a hub with extensive technical resources. Our second finalist is the Brazilian organization Preta Hub, represented on the panel by its founder, Adriana Barbosa, and her colleague, Laura Motara, who will be translating for Adriana. Preta Hub is part of the wider and long-established Instituto Feira Preta, which organizes an annual festival that celebrates Black culture in Brazil and which has strong partnerships within the Black diaspora. Our third panelist is Marth Al-Adassi from the Qatar Foundation, where he leads the Takat for Distance Learning project, which was shortlisted for the prize. That project focuses on creating new opportunities in the creative economy for young people in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, where the unemployment rates are incredibly high, in fact, the highest in the world. Our fourth finalist was the Institute for Creative Entrepreneurship, a specialist agency which unusually primarily operates in rural Serbia. It was established by Hristina Mikic, who joins our panel today. Our fifth finalist was UK-based In Place of War, represented on the panel by one of its founders, Teresa Bean. In Place of War primarily operates outside of the UK in places where war, insurgency, or organized crime have disrupted society and where youth unemployment and marginalization are particular issues. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for taking the time out of busy lives to speak to us and the growing global community of interest in creative entrepreneurship. I want to begin by asking each of you why you have this focus on building entrepreneurship and building these business skills in your program. Can I start with you, Hristina? What made you add this actually into the work that you do? Why is it the focus of the work that you do?
So, hello everybody. In Serbia, the ecosystem of creative economy is still dominated by public institutions, while creative entrepreneurs are considered to be secondary actors in cultural life. This was the primary motive why we start our program. The secondary motive was beyond there is increase of creative entrepreneurs, business life of creative entrepreneurs is short and business turbulence is very often present. They are mostly work in the model, do it by yourself, and there is need to constantly improvement of knowledge and skills. But from the other side, there is no program for empowering and improving business skills of creative entrepreneurs, nor state institutions, offices, or agencies which usually provide some kind of business trainings for the entrepreneurs. They are not providing special and sectoral-based program of trainings for creative entrepreneurs. So we start our initiative in 2012 as a spontaneous training program for small and micro businesses in creative entrepreneurship, independent artists, and social enterprises in creative industry. We start in rural part and periphery part of Serbia, and this was experimental and ad hoc program. Based on this experience, we start with the comprehensive program of trainings in 2040 as a laboratory for creative entrepreneurship, which is at the moment we are implemented as initiatives creative entrepreneurship Serbia.
Thank you, Hristina. Can I just ask you then, is yours really quite a unique program within Serbia?
Yes, this is a very unique program in Serbia. As I mentioned, there is very high level of knowledge gaps between the official business program or official program for supporting entrepreneurs and some program which is focused on the special skills and the knowledge for creative entrepreneurs. Exactly, I would like to point that for creative entrepreneurship, the program should include two components. One is the protection and promotion of cultural expression, and the second one is the component which is related to the economic sustainability. The most of the program in Serbia is focused on economic issue, but without any kind of cultural expression. If you want to protect the diversity of cultural expression, then the program should be very unique for this kind of creative entrepreneurs. So our organization starts with the preliminary idea to support these people, especially young people and women, as very special entrepreneurs, not usually as other one. And we start with mapping studies, and was a very powerful tool for us to understand the business model in creative entrepreneurship in Serbia and to exactly identify what is the need of this entrepreneurial community.
Thank you, Christina. I'm going to move on to Adriana because I'm sure that notion of focusing on women is something that resonates with you as well in the work that you do. But can I ask you why focus on entrepreneurship and business skills in the program that you have? Adriana?
Sim, porque
Yes, because the Black population in Brazil, with all the context of racism and racial discrimination, it enterprises from its culture, from gastronomy, from orality, from the cultural expressions we have. And for a long time, this population has not been inserted in the formal labor market. For many years, one of the few options so that they could have access to income was to be entrepreneurs or work in public services. And when this entrepreneurship of the Black population starts, the beginning is entrepreneurship for survival, for resistance, for need. And the work we've been developing is recognizing that entrepreneurship is strategic for the Black population in Brazil. It is the place where most Black female population is, and how to transform this entrepreneurship of resistance and survival to entrepreneurship for opportunity from valuing Black culture in Brazil. When they develop the process of gastronomy, when they think about tourism, community-based tourism, when they develop several items of decoration, fashion, we think how to offer a welcoming environment, education, and a market where the business can be developed and encourage them so that consume from these women and the Black women to generate income and include them in the economic system.
And my understanding is as well that you've done two things really. One is that the focus is obviously there as far as the Black community is concerned, but you've also sought to include people who are from other marginalized groups within Brazil as well. And you've sought to take the work you do into a wider international community as well. But I wanted to also just ask you, to what degree is there a focus on the creative sector itself in the work that you do?
Basically, the projects that are related both in Brazil with these types of people in the Latin American countries and in South Africa, there are businesses related to fashion, gastronomy, culture and arts, and other areas amongst other areas of creative economy. There's a question that Black entrepreneurs in Brazil, most of them, they actually invest in these areas. You don't have entrepreneurs in Black entrepreneurs in Brazil in investing in industry and in industrial scale production. These are the areas where the Black population is, in the area of creative economy.
Thank you, Adriana. CK, obviously, a lot of this will resonate with you in terms of the diaspora of the Black community globally, and looking at places particularly where there has been historically a majority white population, which has been involved to different degrees in suppressing the Black community within their countries. But at the same time, as far as your working is concerned in Africa, I'm going to ask you first of all, to what degree do you feel that you are actually dealing with a historic legacy in terms of the fact that you're having to build the creative economy from perhaps a slightly different starting place?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice question because we have the second youngest population in the world, actually, to put it into context. But you'll find all of these young people in schools trying to become, the traditional career, they becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer, becoming an accountant, even when they have a real creative mind and life and potential away, from from all of that. So that the dominant belief is the creativity in me is something I do on the side, something I do as a passion, not something as I do because that's what is my gift to, to this world. So our approach, and that's a very big historical, challenge, because even the parents that all take their children to school to become the traditional, career person, not something into the creative economy. So our play into the creative economy and industry is, how do you get this passion, the thing that you love so much and do so well, better than anyone, and try to turn it into a creative enterprise that you can use, to build an entire livelihood on. And it's really new and challenging, and given the historic or the traditional origins of what we believe a career to be.
I remember in your acceptance speech of the award, you were talking a lot about don't stop believing and saying to creative people, actually, don't stop believing, think about what it is you can do. That strikes me as being, I thought it was a very, very powerful message that you gave actually last week. How easy is it to engage with government there? Because obviously there's a lot that organizations can do in terms of civil society, but one of the problems always is about getting government to get the right policies in place to support the development of the creative sector.
I think it's and just having that conversation today, it's a difficult one to engage with government because a lot of these are new forms of expressions, new forms of reality that don't necessarily represent what they've already been doing to support young people or new practices. And at first, of course, I thought government is not playing its role. But I got to that point of realization that it's actually probably also an awareness gap. Where would government have seen or experienced the new form of creative economy that we're talking about? I hosted a representative from one of the government agencies into the space, and they thought they were coming into a typical innovation hub. Now, when we spent 2 hours talking about the creative economy, when they were leaving, they asked me, how come I don't see the desktop computers? Because a hub is where you have desktop computers and young people are learning Microsoft Office, So changing that is a lot of work that needs to go into education piece. And that's why I'm proud about the association with UNESCO and this prize, because it begins to question status quo and how we're approaching opportunities for young people,
which of course is one of the objectives we have in the work that we're doing with the prize. I'm going to move on to Moath, because you're actually operating in a very different environment, because one would argue that government doesn't really work at all as far as Palestine is concerned. There's a real division between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip in terms of, or certainly in my understanding, in terms of the way in which governance works. And obviously there are lots of kind of other issues there as well. How can you just talk about, because I know you come from Palestine originally, can you just talk about a little about why this project and why the focus on entrepreneurship and why then the focus on creative entrepreneurship?
Thank you, Andrew. Well, actually, when we have started our program 2015, we have made our studies to see the possibility of creating jobs for people. The main pain problem was in Gaza was the unemployment, the real unemployment rates, as well as people cannot travel outside Gaza. There is a blockage, there is air blockage, there is land blockage, there is sea blockage. They simply can't leave. What they had at that time and now is the internet. They have the internet and they have 4 hours electricity per day until now, fine. So our main focus is to convince people that they can work from home. And this thing was actually very hard. For them to believe that I will be working from home and getting paid every month and in some time I will be having my dream job or my dream company. That was actually something really far away. People was not really convinced about that. So what we have done, we have started our training programs, our lean startup program, which was a 3 months focused training, intensive training. And we have paying the, actually we have paid the transportation for people to come because they don't have money to come to join the classes. At that time, we were not really focusing on the online training. So that's why it was really important to join the training face-to-face at that time. So, and on the other side, we have been creating job opportunities here from Qatar. In Qatar, you know, it is one of the most wealthy countries in the world. We have many businesses are open for the entrepreneurs, are open for the people who's good in whatever they do. So that's why we have decided to start training people on the creative economy sector. We have started training them on the content writing, on video production, on graphic design, and in many other things. And we started creating job opportunities for them. We have supported them through our internship program. So to convince the companies here in Qatar, just to give them the shot to work with them online. At the same time, we have been creating our portal to promote those people, to promote their CVs and their works. And on the same time, we have created our workstation, our first workstation. The idea of workstation is to make people work from offices, again, because there is so many obstacles in their homes. Their homes are really crowded. If anyone know about Palestine and Gaza, the houses is really tiny and the people are really crowded in the same house. So that's why we had to create a job environment for people. So they come in the morning, they punch their work, they punch and they start working with their employer in other country. Currently, we are hiring people in employees in more than 17 countries. We have provided employees in 17 countries now, in Canada, in England, in Europe, in Asia. We have them all over the world, and some of them are working with a very, very high recognized international companies. So this is what we have done until now.
Brilliant. I'm going to bring Teresa in at this point, if that's okay. Teresa, what you do is not really based in the UK. You're based in the UK as an organization, but the work that you do is far more global in that way. And I just wondered, just listening to what is being said by the others, if there are things there that really resonate with you in terms of their experiences, but also to ask you why, in terms of In Place of War, why you decided to focus on creative entrepreneurship in the work that you do and the business skills. Why do you think that is so important in terms of some of the places that you're working?
So yeah, I think definitely, and what the other panelists have said really resonates. So in terms of, I guess, this kind of lack of understanding of the potential of the creative and cultural sectors, and again, kind of that legacy of colonialism, and perhaps education is about learning by rote or memorizing things and not kind of developing skills, kind of critical thinking skills, or maybe skills that are required to be an entrepreneur, or actually just life skills in general. And again, this idea of kind of lack of access. So something we came across, we work in sites of conflict. So this could be an active conflict, places like Syria or Yemen, post-conflict, so places like Uganda or Bosnia. And then also communities that have been affected by kind of gang conflicts. You might have examples here of kind of El Salvador or Colombia. And what we found that there was actually kind of lots of creative talent, and people were very, almost had kind of a creative response to conflict or to the situation in which they lived in, but they really struggled to sustain the activity or make a living from their art. And that was due to lack of access to knowledge, training and networks, so they were quite isolated. And so we started to do formal kind of networks and workshops with people. And often we saw that kind of business or the creative entrepreneur programs often draw knowledge from maybe Europe or the US, which wasn't particularly relevant to young people maybe living in really disadvantaged situations in sites of conflict. So working with the networks, we have a network of 130 what we call change makers, so creative kind of entrepreneurs, primarily in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. We worked with them to develop a program so that we could develop a structured program which has been certified by the University of Manchester, drawing on their kind of models of creative entrepreneurship, but then mixing that with more practical skills. And also business skills, so to enable people to kind of critically reflect on the material, but then also to develop their own kind of projects and actively kind of develop practical skills around budgets and proposals. And we again recognized it was really important to certify this program from a university, because again, lots of people who live in sites of conflict have had their education disrupted. So we've worked with refugees who of course have been displaced and are living in refugee settlements in Uganda. So having a certificate from a university and having that kind of marker of achievement was really important. And again, it's enabled them then to go on to do other education programs at universities, but also again, in terms of attracting clients or business partners, it's given them confidence in their abilities and skills.
I think that's what's really interesting is that listening to all of you speak, you've all really had to develop what you're doing in terms of the local needs that is there. But it does really seem to me that you're also all focused on supporting people who've been marginalized in different ways. You seem to be trying to break down barriers, gender, age, race, ethnicity, economic disadvantage. Why is this so important to you, and how do these changes advance sustainable development of the creative economy? Can I start off by asking Adriana that, because it's very clear that that is kind of what you're doing through your work in Brazil.
The marginalized populations in Brazil, periphery dwellers, women, Black people, and their majority have been working in the viewpoint under a creative economy for a long time, even before the concept came to Brazil. I see it as a strategy, because increasingly more, especially after the pandemic, people are revisiting the way they consume, and they want to consume not only products, but they want to know about the stories. And I see many entrepreneurs in various areas of creative economy are able to tell their stories, and the creative economy becomes a key tool for that. For today, after the self-declaration of the Black population, one of the things that most influenced the process of self-declaration has been aesthetics, hair, clothing, and many Black women working in the field of this aesthetic that is a reflex of this identity strengthening. Many Black people in audiovisual field to talk in the first person, tell your own history in Brazil for a long time. The books, the stories, the histories, literature, music were not in the hands of Black people. This is quite recent. Quite recently, Black people are ahead of their production chain to produce music, records, plays, theater plays. And I see this as a great strategy for Brazil, not only from the standpoint of what happened before as an alternative or fringe way of being strategic and economic for these types of people in Brazil. People already did it, but in a very alternative fringe way. And this needs to be done in an institutionalized way with public policies looking into that. Public policies, investment from private initiative to strengthen this practice that has been happening by these people in Brazil.
Can I just challenge you on that in a sense, because I'm very conscious of the fact that the Black community or Black people are more visible within the creative economy or within the creative sector than perhaps ever before. But one of the difficulties, surely, and I certainly think it's a problem here and in many of the countries that I work with, is that marginalized people can be visible, but they don't necessarily have an opportunity in terms of building businesses. And that strikes me, the fact that, it's okay having the figureheads there in that way, the visible people there, but what you want to be able to do is to really build the ownership of those businesses, the economic return, the participation in that way, in a far more instrumental way as far as the Black community or any other marginalized community is concerned. Is that also part of what you're trying to do?
Parte do que eu venho fazendo
This is part of what I have been doing in the past 20 years, which is actually bringing knowledge and opportunity to people that have decided to be entrepreneurs in audiovisual, in music, that decided to be entrepreneurs in fashion, to bring technical knowledge to these areas so that they can do that for life, to have income mobility. Many of them did it out of sheer survival. Now they do it as a strategy, as a business, as business people, as owners of their own businesses. Today you have a vast array of young Black people, owners of their own companies. And most of these companies are in the area of creative economy. Today, the greatest reference in Brazil of creative economy is of a Black young man that started selling his CDs. He recorded his CDs. He had no recorder, no distributor. He actually made the whole distribution chain for a CD. Today, he is one of the greatest references of music, with influence in fashion, in music, in streaming, with content production for TV. He has TV shows. And so a young Black boy from the periphery that started believing his own work and dominating the supply chain. And the great key here in Brazil is to dominate the production chain, from the raw material to selling, the whole journey. And what Feira Preta does is to provide tools of education and technical tools so that they can dominate and master all the production chain with no intermediaries. They're being owner of their own work and their own marketing and market construction process. That's why in what we do, we have the arm of education and we have the arm of market, of commercialization. The entrepreneur goes through the training program. Right after that, we have the platform, the online sales platform. We have the festival where they can sell their production, and we have partnership with shopping centers, with local markets, pop-up spaces where they can place the products to be sold.
CK, does that really resonate with you in terms of your experience and what you're trying to do in Uganda as well?
Well, Andrew, I think that question hits really hard down because, and the reason this is really passionate for me is all the young people I work with, any of their story could be my own story. You know, I said during the acceptance speech, it took me 80 job applications to get my first job. You know, it's worse now. And we'll never create the number of jobs we need for all the young people in the country. And I'll tell you this very personal, you know, while flying from Paris with my prize, I felt like a failure because on the same flight, there were about 30 young girls, you know, coming in back from, you know, Saudi Arabia working. You know, there's a whole labor export thing that's going on here. But if you could listen to the stories, the experiences, you begin to wonder, how shall we, you know, solve this problem of creating purpose among, you know, this young generation? So I think the creative economy is the single most important tool because it puts the power in the individual to be able to build something from what they can uniquely do. And that's why, you know, we're giving it everything we can.
But that does require a degree of inner strength and yes, belief. And of course, one of the problems sometimes is that, you know, that self-belief can actually be a bit of a distortion. How do you go about managing expectations as well? Because that is, you know, if we can't manage expectations, then it's not just we should limit people, but we also don't want people to find themselves in a situation where, in actual fact, all those dreams kind of crumble. And it's to give them the right sort of guidance. How is there a mentoring element to what you're doing as well?
Yeah, you're really asking the right questions. I asked a very popular entrepreneur in the country how we solve a problem like this, where there's limited belief and, you know, dreams can be crushed anytime. I asked him, so what do you advise someone like me who's made it my life mission to work with young people to support them? And he said, you know, for lack of I don't want to discourage you, but you have to keep going. That's where Don't Stop Believing comes from. That's the depth of don't stop believing. And it's also the depth of the reason I'm able to do this is I was taught to believe, and I had someone believing in me. So I tell the young people actually that I work with that if I had me when I was their age, I'd be very successful. So I see the platforms we create as an opportunity to get them to believe in something. And I think the only thing that can't be really stopped if they get that realization of what they can contribute, and if that can come from our platforms, then we've taught them to believe, and we've made a small contribution to that journey that they need to take.
Well, I saw you nodding there. Does this resonate with the way in which you're thinking and the approach that you've taken as far as the work in Palestine is concerned?
Well, actually, while the colleagues were talking, I was actually thinking about the journey that I have started to work in Palestine. I have decided to work in Palestine because originally I'm from Palestine. I know the size and the weight of the life there. I know how does people really feel when they don't have the opportunity to work, or they don't have any plan, they don't have A or B plan. Thanks God we are all here. We have plans. Fine, they don't have. As I mentioned, and as you mentioned at the beginning, our initiative is supported and hosted by Qatar Charity. The core business of Qatar Charity actually is to help people. This year they have spent about $500 million just to help people all over the world in more than 60 countries. So one of the most important things that let us start working in Gaza, and this is the first thing I remember I said, that if our initiative to train people and create jobs for them in Gaza worked, this thing can be done in any place in the world. And what we have done, actually, we have succeeded. We didn't solve the problem. The problem is still there. There is still thousands of people, 100,000 of people just in Gaza, fine, in need for work. But we believe that in contribution with others, and we can solve partially the problem. Our work, even if it's really small, and the result, 52,000 people has been beneficiated from our initiative, is really still tiny. But I believe we can help other communities, underprivileged communities, to survive in somehow. Where I work in Gaza, there is 70% of people in Gaza population, and from our beneficiaries is from refugees. And generally people in Gaza is really in poor, and they have need for all basic needs. And the people, especially the refugees, is in a very bad situation. So that's why we believe that if we succeeded on our initiative, we will have it we will have it, and we will work it, and it will be done. It will be worked in any other country. So that's why now we are planning to go outside our zone and to start tell people that this initiative will work. It will help people to survive. So this is what we have done now.
Thank you, Matt. Teresa, I'm just listening to that. And the discussion then about kind of refugees and working with refugees. It does strike me that we live in a world where, arguably because of climate change, we're likely to see more refugees in the future. How important do you think the creative economy can be with the population which is displaced, but is also displaced in a way which they really have very little around them? Just from your experience of working with refugees, how do you go about building up that dialogue in that way?
Yeah, so what we've seen is that actually art or creativity is often been a response to conflict, or has occurred despite of conflict. And in that sense, you find, perhaps because people have very little, in some way they're kind of innately kind of entrepreneurial, creative, and can make something from nothing or very little. And I think we've tried to kind of demonstrate that through the program. And as I said before about, and again, thinking about this idea of kind of, you know, motivating and inspiring people, it's about then kind of having achievable points of reference. So thinking, oh, this is what people are doing in Colombia, or this is what people are doing in Palestine. And, you know, could you apply this to your context? And again, I think a network is kind of a network of support. So again, encouraging people to collaborate is really important. And often you find when people have very little, in certain contexts in the world, there's this idea of, oh, somebody might steal my idea or might steal my work. And so again, it's about trying to encourage maybe changes in behavior and seeing the kind of benefits of teamwork and collaboration and sharing ideas, and kind of getting people to reflect on your ideas and then working together to develop new ideas, I think has been really important and will be really important going forward, because this is very much an ecosystem. And I think something about the creative economy in particular, we've seen, again, in the places that we work, there's kind of a lot of social focus on kind of creative expression. So in places like Colombia, we've seen hip hop being used as a tool to prevent conflict or reduce violence, to get young people out of gangs. Again, in kind of some of the young people that we've worked with, some of their projects have been around kind of arts-based mental health, which again, something, you know, is a taboo. This was a project in Uganda is a taboo issue. So using arts to kind of address health issues. Again, people using recycling and upcycling to create fashion, accessories and things like that. Again, demonstrates how the creative economy can then again also drive kind of more sustainable development, which of course will be issues for people who are going to be displaced because of climate change in the future.
I mean, Stina, I mean, I'm sure all that resonates with you in terms of the work that you do, particularly working in a rural area, but also because of the work you do with the Roma community, which is arguably one of the most marginalized communities actually within Europe. That they still have a huge amount of misunderstanding as far as that group is concerned. But just, are you hopeful in terms of the role that the creative economy can play, given what are obviously going to be increasing pressures post-COVID, when we get to that stage, with an economy that globally is fairly battered in terms of being able to get the resources to build what you need to do?
So we understand the creative economy that it is based on let's say, the three key values. The first one we call access to cultural possibilities. The second one, freedom to cultural expression to all people in the different communities, and equal economic opportunities. So this value of creative economy is very important for the marginalized community in Europe and also in Serbia. And in the same way, this is also let's say, the social power of the creative economy, because in the Europe and on the globe, there is a high level of discussion about only economic growth of creative economy, but very often the people forget about the social power of the culture, which can be, let's say, implemented through the development of creative economy. So in my first explanation, I mentioned that our program is very, let's say, in-depth based on the duality of creative economy, the cultural promotion and the protection of cultural expression and economic sustainability. So for our program, it is not important economic growth, because our research found this is very short and unsustainable entrepreneurship initiatives in the sense of protecting and promoting the cultural expression. So we want to build a different approach to creative economy through supporting creative entrepreneurship. And related to the Roma community, We also work with the people with disabilities and marginalized women in the periphery place of Serbia. The reason is that we want to show how the culture, to show exactly the transformative power of culture, how these people can build dignity, and in the same time how these people can improve economic situation, because this is very interrelation. If you are poor, very often you don't have social position in the community, and sometimes you can marginalize yourself personally. You know, the society want to accept you as a person, but you are ashamed or you are not comfortable with your social position. So through the program for Roma community creative entrepreneurship, we are very successful to show that there is no cultural expression which can be the strong tool for improvement position the different community. And I shared the opinion with a colleague from Qatar and the program from Palestine. If you are successful with the marginalized group to show the social and economic power of culture, you can do in any place. So you can use this as, let's say, the role model for the other communities.
I mean, I think it's one of the things that's also always fascinated me about the creative sector and the creative economy itself is the fact that it is there is such breadth to it, and you have a huge number of micro businesses, and many of those are actually also social enterprises in the way in which they work.
Yes.
And but then the whole process of seeing the growth of the sector in itself, going through small, medium-sized, larger enterprises to kind of global corporations. And of course, the fascinating thing is that actually in the creative economy, there are significant global corporations, and those global corporations are actually very good at, when they see something which they think is going to work and be profitable, about swooping in and buying them out and seeing that and really feeding off that in that way. It's a very, very interesting economy in that sense, in terms of the way in which it operates, and is very much driven by that innate grassroots creativity in that sense, and that ideas can pop up from anywhere. And really, those global corporations need to be able to look very, very carefully around them to see what it is that's interesting and where it's going to. I wanted to ask a question of you all very briefly, though, about how important training is as far as the work that you do. So we can just quickly go around to you, if we can go quickly around you all, in terms of talking about training and the training that you give. How important is that entrepreneurship training? And I mean entrepreneurship training rather than skills-based in terms of creative skills, but entrepreneurship training. How important is that to the work that you're doing, and how important will it be, do you think, in the future? CK, can I start with you?
Yeah, I think training completes for me the loop of value to the creative entrepreneur, especially entrepreneurship training. First, you love what you do, then it gives you, imaginations about where it can go. Then you get encouraged that this can actually be something that I do for the rest of my life as a livelihood. Then I see training as that bridge to actually achieving those aspirations and completing that loop of and that cycle of value for creative.
Thank you. What about you? How important is creative entrepreneurship training as far as your work is concerned now, and is that going to grow?
Well, actually, when we started, we the first step we have done was a train to place program. It was direct to the point, train to place. So that was one of the hot flagships program. It was a 10-week entrepreneurial journey that provide hands-on experience on how to successfully start a company within the creative economy sector. So that's why we have started with the film production, animation, movies, content writing, design and illustration, journalism, translation, and so on. So yes, actually, it is the cornerstone of our work is the training, is the right training. So in addition to the employability training, that to teach people how to find jobs and how to create jobs and how to start their own businesses.
But I mean, inherent in what I was saying before is the fact that if you are expecting a big company to come in and sweep in and pick up ideas in that way and small businesses and bring them into there's a whole issue of the ownership of IP. So is that something there that you're actually teaching as well and talking to people about? Because that's one of the most difficult areas often for people to be able to understand.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yes, that's true. What we have done in our program, that we have helped the people that who started the business. We have supported them with a seed fund to start their business, and we started promoting those companies' works through bringing them outsourcing opportunities from outside. So in this case, we make sure that those companies are sustainable, and they can sustain themselves, and so they can hire new people from our training programs.
Teresa, I mean, the creative entrepreneurship training is obviously absolutely at the center of what you do. It's the basis of the work that you're doing. Do you see that changing? Do you think there are new strands that you may need to address?
Yeah, I mean, we have developed, I think, because of COVID, we have developed kind of new education programs. So looking at kind of capacity building and kind of recovery, kind of post-COVID, and looking at, I guess, more of the civic role or kind of the societal role of kind of arts-based practice and the creative economy. So that is something that we have been focusing on, I guess, responding to the need of kind of the recovery. And then also we saw during the pandemic, a lot of our organizations kind of repurpose what they were doing to address very, very kind of immediate needs around kind of food insecurity during lockdown. Because again, lots of artists and creative practitioners have been quite precarious situations in the informal economy. And so we saw them then kind of starting to develop projects around community kitchens and growing food. So then it kind of shows that kind of wider civic role that a lot of the arts organisations that we work with and arts practitioners we work with kind of have in their communities, which is again is something that's not often talked about when we talk about the creative economy.
And that's something you were effectively touching on a few moments ago, Christina, in terms of your comments. I'm just wondering, in terms of entrepreneurship training, how important do you see that in terms of the work that you do going forward?
So in the case of our program, we are quite specific concerning the other program because we have two lines. The one line is to improve different business aspects of creative entrepreneurship, and the second one is also to improve capacity of creative entrepreneurs to participate in creation of the fair and sustainable policy for support creative entrepreneurship, and to be equal partner for the government and government stakeholders. So it is important because we build the new values within the creative entrepreneurship. This is the two keywords which can describe our program. The first one is the sustainable, and the second one, fairness. We teach the creative entrepreneur how to implement in their work the fair practice, which means that economic benefits should be distributed on a equal way, between the different stakeholders.
And that must resonate as far as you're concerned, Adriana, in terms of the work that you're doing, that notion of creating that balance in the program. But again, how important now do you think creative entrepreneurship training, the business training, is actually as far as the work that you do?
It is fundamental to have all the part of training, because this is where we bring what the market has regarding entrepreneurship in Brazil has codes. You have to understand what a business plan is, cash flows, tools linked to financial aspects, if you don't understand those codes, you cannot access funds. So all these codes the market has within the entrepreneurship scene, we decode them for entrepreneurs. The second thing is building networks. These networks help the entrepreneurs to get to know each other and do business amongst themselves. So we encourage the communities of learning, exchange of knowledge, and communities of exchange of services, collective purchases, development of collab products and services. So not only from the standpoint of education, of actually turning information accessible, technical information accessible, but also building communities and support networks.
And I'm going to take that because I think that's a really important and an opportunity to move on slightly to my final question, and that's the issue of networks. You've all been listening to one another, and I know that you're all anxious to have this opportunity to talk about what you do and to hear about what each of you do in this context. How important for you in the context of your program would it be to have more regular dialogues of this sort, talking to one another, having a network, not just of creative entrepreneurs, but of the organizations supporting creative entrepreneurs? Is that something which you think would have value to have that sort of global dialogue? Marth, can I start off with you very quickly, if that's all right?
Well, actually, yes, during this talk and meeting the other candidates, actually, I have started some ideas that I really want to share with others. So for us, we are open to any organization, to any individual actually wants to benefit from our work. And we want to share the experience we have. And we believe that there are still so many things we can do and learn from others that can benefit the underprivileged communities that we are working on. As I mentioned, we are going to expand our work in many other countries. That's our plan for next year. Fine. So yes, that would be really helpful to have such support from everyone here and from any other organization specialized in what we are talking about in the creative economy sector. This is a very huge sector with $1 billion for people. So it has to be organized. We have to take the opportunity and we have to take our share from this size of market. We need to train people and to give them the opportunity to prove themselves. So that's why hopefully after we finish this, we have some brilliant ideas we would like to share with everyone else.
Teresa, I know that you already in a way have a network that you work with, but how important is it for you to be able to extend that network and to have this sort of global dialogue?
Oh no, I think it's absolutely fundamental. I've been really inspired by hearing about the other projects from the panelists today. You know, so I think it's really important to create these new knowledge networks and facilitate collaboration, because that's key to any kind of successful project. But I also think it's really important to involve other stakeholders in the kind of culture and creative sectors. So governments, policymakers, funders, investors, academics, because I think, again, there's a real lack of maybe research and understanding of what the creative and cultural sectors are. And I think, you know, we're going to create a more enabling environment for a development of a sustainable creative sector, then we need to have those other stakeholders involved. And I think, you know, that's perhaps something that, you know, we struggle with. And so I would certainly welcome the opportunity to have dialogue with kind of other actors as well as just my peers.
Christina, that must resonate with you in terms of research. Do you think that there is more research which needs to be done in terms of the breadth of the work that's going on in terms of creative entrepreneurship? And I also wanted to ask you, how important is evaluation in that context as well?
It is very important, you know, to focus much more on high quality research, because a lot of research in creative economy is based on the desk research or macroeconomic data from the statistics, which don't offer the government enough information, data, and analytics to develop the, let's say, the sustainable policy of to support creative entrepreneurship. From the other side, there is also continuity in collecting data in creative economy, because a lot of program is supported by the donors, and when it is completed program, there is no enough funds to invest to improve this data and to use the data. But what is the new phenomenon in the field of government policy, especially in the Serbia and the West Balkan, is the wrong using of data to support the different policy measures, which is not always in the right way supporting creative entrepreneurship. And I would like to agree with Teresa, because this one's in the mind to point at the end. When we discuss about the global dialogue without stakeholders from the government, policy, the offices, it is, let's say, impossible to develop sustainable creative economy. We can provide the training, we can improve the skills of creative entrepreneurship, but without friendly environment for this kind of business, in the long term, there is no possibility, you know, for sustainability of creative entrepreneur. And I would like just to end to add with this sentence. You mentioned when you asked the colleague from Uganda how they get government in the process of supporting creative entrepreneurship. I think beside this question, how to involve a government in this process, is also the question how to build capacity of government to provide sustainable policy measures to support creative entrepreneurship. Because a lot of policymakers know about creative economy. They know to read the, let's say, the different publication. There is a lot of publication, a lot of events which promote the creative economy. But from the other side, there is gap in the knowledge of policymaker how to develop country-specific or the local-specific program for their community to support creative entrepreneurship. In Serbia, we have the copy-paste program for the different countries, but this kind of program cannot be effective because this is the, let's say, the community which is very influenced by the cultural behavior, you know, the different business model and like this. So I think that much more should be invested in research, you know, high quality research of creating entrepreneurship beyond the, you know, you have a lot of mapping study, desk study about creative economy, you know, in the different countries.
Thank you, Christina. Adriana, you're obviously very well networked already, because you've done work in, I know, in Colombia and in South Africa, in terms of the networks you've been creating. How important is it for you to be able to work, obviously through the Black diaspora globally, but actually be able to take examples from other parts of the world to bring into the work that you do?
We
already operate with this rationale, with diaspora, with no territorial boundaries. Yes, the territories being the African diaspora worldwide. But many of the things that I have seen in other places, having opportunity to travel, interacting with other countries, we replicate best practices here in Brazil. The model of the festival today is a model I discovered when I was in Atlanta, in the United States. Atlanta has a high percentage of Black population. I studied the model of the festival in Atlanta to try to adapt to the Brazilian reality. And at the same time, there are things that we develop in Brazil through the Feira Preta Institute in interaction with Colombia that is replicated by them there. And we always think that it is not just Feira Preta moving to other regions, applying the same thing that happens in Brazil, but applying the methodology. I'm very interested in building methodologies to be replicated, systematized and replicated. Everything we do, all the programs we carry out, they have this viewpoint of building, systematizing and replicating from local vocations. And at the same time, interacting with other countries, I like to learn social technologies, methodologies to combine with the things that we do in Brazil.
CK, can I finish by asking you a question? Very much picking up on what Adriana was saying there as well. I mean, that whole notion of replicating a methodology, to what degree do you want to replicate the methodology you have with Motive in terms of other parts of Uganda and other parts of Africa or globally? Because I know, I gather from something that's been said to me that, you know, there's already been interest expressed as far as Bangladesh is concerned. So how important is that to you? And to what degree do you need to balance that? Because you're fairly new as an organization, to balance that with actually making what you do sustainable in terms of yourselves as well.
Well, I think it's a really nice question, Andrew, and I'll tell you that I think that's the most sure way and probably only way for us to scale what we're trying to do. I mean, when Adriana was talking about festivals that she picked up in Atlanta, I just Googled right now to understand about how she modeled, you know, the festivals in Atlanta. So I think, and we'll definitely be, you know, picking up on that too here. It's really critical to being an entrepreneur is already hard enough. Being a creative entrepreneur is even much harder. So it's really critical to learn from already what's working and, you know, transfer that knowledge. And, you know, you can kill too much pain and so much years of learning by being able to, you know, pick up and transfer learnings as you look to scale you know, the work. So we're already doing that in Uganda because Motive, whereas it's headquartered in the capital city, we are spread out across 4 regions of the country, and it's not the same, but we have presence there and we begin to engage creatives across the country. And the element of technology becomes really critical because we built what we call the virtual factory network, where we map cottage businesses and creatives across the country, and we're able to reach them where they are without necessarily expecting them, you know, to come to us.
Well, thank you very much, CK, and thank you to all the panelists and to everybody who signed in today or later on to listen to this discussion and follow this discussion. 2021 is the International Year for the Creative Economy. As such, I'd like to invite you all to celebrate that diversity of cultural expressions that makes our world wealthier, our societies more prosperous, and ourselves more human and connected more closely to one another. 2021 may be coming to a close, but I do hope that what you have heard about the work of the finalists for the Creative Economy Prize will have inspired you to think about what you could do for the remaining year and beyond, wherever you are. Perhaps you can see the opportunity to set up a local initiative. Perhaps you can see the potential for building a partnership with one of the finalists. Perhaps you know of an organization that will be a worthy nominee for the 2023 Creative Economy Prize. In conclusion, I want to thank again and congratulate not only the prize winner, CK and Motive of Uganda, but all of the finalists. You've all been doing such amazing work, and I hope this result debate gives your initiatives the global visibility that they so clearly deserve. To keep in touch with UNESCO and the Creative Economy Prize, subscribe to this channel. You can find the link below. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge the generous contribution of the government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh towards UNESCO Bangladesh Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman International Prize for the Creative Economy. I'm delighted to say it's going to be back in 2 years' time and again 2 years after that. So this is a discussion and a debate and an initiative which is going to really develop traction, and I hope you'll continue to be engaging with it. Thank you very much indeed.